Well, what you see here now is probably the culmination of everything that's happened in the last 6.5 years. If you'd asked me whether we'd planned it or not, and whether we could foresee what was going to happen, then in all honesty I could say that I didn't know what was going to happen. It was all a dream that a group of people who were interested in theatre would like their own premises. We started here 6 years ago. We refurbished the place, we scrounged materials, we did everything we could to get the theatre back and into the position it was when it first opened in 1867. We are now 6.5 years into the refurbishment. We've finished the auditorium. The premises around the auditorium still hasn't been completed yet, but what you're about to see in the next part of the film is the different parts of the theatre that have been refurbished, what the theatre's all about, and the enthusiasm of people who love the theatre and have taken the theatre in their own hands and want the theatre to survive from now and live forever in the same glory in which it started in 1867.
The Tyne Theatre and Opera House is a magnificent Victorian theatre situated in Newcastle's Westgate Road. It has been restored to its original 1867 condition by a dedicated band of theatre enthusiasts. One of the men responsible for its Italianated design was Joseph Cowan, a Tyneside industrialist and friend of Garibaldi. A statue of Joseph Cowan stands today not far from the theatre. Richard Young was the manager who brought to Newcastle the theatre's first London productions in place of the regular stock company. The theatre prospered, and Carl Rosa, the founder of the famous opera company, came to Newcastle and gave many performances. Sir Augustus Harris, who controlled London's Theatre Royal in Drury Lane, was the man who first made full use of the theatre's understage machinery by bringing dramatic and musical spectaculars to Newcastle. To tell you more about this unique theatre, let's go inside and meet theatre historian Ron Berrymen.
Welcome to the new Tyne Theatre and Opera House. My name is Ron Berrymen, and I have spent the last few years researching the history of this fascinating building. Will you come with me now on a tour of the theatre? This is where the magic of the stage machinery is to be seen in all its glory. Well, here we are underneath the stage with the staircase duplicated on the other side, the grave trap, and here we have the demon trap, which is also duplicated on the other side of the stage.
Where am I? Is this the new Tyne Theatre Newcastle? I said, is this the new Tyne Theatre Newcastle? Oh, splendid, because this is where I'm supposed to be. You see, because I'm... no, don't tell me. Yes, I'm here to tell you a story. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Once upon a time. But first I must take you back in time to the year 1734, when good King Richard was on the throne, and he was away on a crusade to the Holy Land, leaving his realm in the care of his nasty brother, the evil and twisted Prince John, who was assisted by an even nastier character, the Sheriff of Nottingham. Whenever you see him, boo and hiss. But fortunately, there are still people who are prepared to fight to the end for their rights and for their king. Robin Hood leads a band of outlaws in Sherwood Forest, and I'm here to lend a little magical aid. And there are still people in the realm who are prepared to enjoy themselves.
Well, here we are, 15 feet below the stage with the works. All in wood, nice white pine, all renovated, all working, and in the original condition of the 1867 machinery. Basically, we have the 4 winches which raise the bridges which stretch the whole length of the stage and on which set pieces can be built and brought up through the bottom. Between each of the bridges, we have 2 slots in which flat scenery can also be brought up. So apart from flying down scenery on the big transformation scenes in the pantomime, they could bring all the set pieces up through the stage. It took a lot of muscle power, and actually in the old days they reckoned that the pantomimes at the time employed approximately 400 people, 300 being acting on the stage, and about 80 people working down here, often in families. Each family had his own little winch. Below here there's the cellar, which is 30 feet down, and which the big wheels, which you'll see, are used to operate these. And it was in this cellar that we think that the old stables exist, and the flooring can still be seen, because the building was erected on the old stables and tannery which used to exist in this area. These are the beams supporting the stage itself. And on the wall here we have one of the Victorian stage machinery that we found when we took the theatre over, consisting of a sort of seat with a long metal bar. And I think it was used in the early days as a form of levitation act, where the bar was pushed through the curtains and the occupant of the seat apparently floated over the heads of the audience.
It was this type of stage equipment which made the amazing aerial effects, including flights out over the audience, possible. Kellar's sensational levitation act, from stage to dome, seen here on this old poster, was especially popular with Tyne Theatre audiences.
Is one of the old limes, which is a channel in which the lime was placed, and then the gas jets were ignited to give a brilliance which the normal gas lighting couldn't do. And it used to be said that the old professionals often used to come on and give a little stamp with the foot, which caused the gas to surge through the mains and give a brilliant effect for their own entrance. Here is the original bill showing the visit of Sarah Bernhardt and her company from Paris to the theatre in July 22, 1897. This was one of 3 visits that Sarah Bernhardt made to the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. made 3 appearances at the Tyne Theatre, and we've got a little piece of apparatus here which would be nice to think that the divine Sarah removed her makeup, put a towel here, had her makeup in here, and used this little tap to wash her face with, but we've got no guarantee about that. A fascinating piece of dressing room equipment. Exploring the theatre prior to its reopening, we found that beneath the stage, the original stage machinery of 1867 was still intact. On the stage, behind the cinema screen, the scenery from the last show of 1919, Maid of the East, was still to be seen.
Ron Berrymen certainly knows a thing or two about this unique theatre. Those spectacular transformation scenes provided employment for 400 people every year. Among the galaxy of famous names who appeared in pantomime were Vesta Tilley, who starred as Robin Hood in Babes in the Wood way back in 1888. In Aladdin in 1895, a young George Robey appeared. He was to get fame and fortune years later as the Prime Minister of Mirth. Scotland's own ambassador, Harry Lauder, made an appearance at the Tyne Theatre in 1906 in Aladdin. Appearing with Lauder as his leading lady was Bessie Featherstone. Tragically, she collapsed and died on the pantomime's opening night. An ashtray souvenir recalls that ill-fated pantomime.
With increasing competition from other theatres that had sprung up in and around Newcastle, the Tyne Theatre experimented with moving pictures. D.W. Griffith's famous film, The Birth of a Nation, was brought to Newcastle in 1916, direct from London's Drury Lane. One of the film's most dramatic moments was the assassination scene. This gripped Newcastle audiences, and so popular and sensational was the film that in 1917 it was given another showing, playing for a season to capacity audiences. By 1919, the Tyne Theatre had become known as the Stoll Picture Theatre and continued as a cinema for 55 years.
A 40-piece symphony orchestra was engaged for the occasion to provide the background music, and I find it rather sad to think that in 1917, when Howard and Wyndham's lease of the theatre ran out, their last presentation was a 3-week rerun of Birth of a Nation. Looking out into the auditorium, we can now see this beautiful theatre almost fully restored, but certainly as it was in 1867, a beautiful relic of Victorian elegance, with only one permanent reserved seat, and that is the one up in the gods for our friendly ghost, Mr. Samuel Crowther, late stage carpenter of the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. Every theatre has its ghost, and ours is reputed to be that of Robert Crowther, the stage carpenter, who was killed by a cannonball which fell from the thunder roll down on the stage in the 1890s. Here, up in the gods, right at the top of the theatre, we like to look after our ghost, and we have a permanent seat reserved for him, Robert Crowther. Here in the gods of the theatre, it is possible to get a good view of the wooden shell roof, which does so much for the acoustics of the theatre. You can probably hear a piano and singer in the background from the stage. Above the roof is the old carpenter's shop, which includes the 4 water tanks for collecting water for the water effects. And originally the roof was designed so that it could be removed in sections up into the roof if repairs were necessary. Well, we've been in the very bowels of the theatre, and now we're having a breath of fresh air right on the roof. Behind the camera is where the sign "Stall Talkies" is painted on the outer wall. Originally there was a large electric sign advertising the Stall Cinema. And here are 2 of the 4 vases right on the roof of the theatre, Italian in style, almost like a little bit of canaletto pointing to the skies in Westcott Road.
BBC Radio Newcastle News at just after 9 o'clock. David Nisbet reporting. A question mark hangs over the future of the historic New Tyne Theatre in Newcastle this morning after a big fire which badly damaged the roof and stage. 70 firemen using breathing apparatus fought the blaze in the Westgate Road Theatre, which had been completely restored at a cost of about £1 million. After a checkered history, the 118-year-old theatre has recently re-established itself on the cultural map, attracting many prestigious shows and performers. The chairman of the New Tyne Theatre Trust, Jack Dixon, says yesterday's fire has come as a dreadful blow.
It is an absolute disaster. We're only 2 months off completing all of the works. We've been working 9 years on it, and this happens. You know, the whole of the backstage is gone. We don't know anything really. You know, we're just shattered at the minute.
Immediate prospects, you have a show of Annie on at the moment. What happens now?
Well, we can't do it. And we'll not be able to do shows, I would think, well, until I see the damage. I don't know how long it'll take. But it's going to take a long time.
Could this be the end of the New Tyne Theatre?
Oh, I hope not. I hope not.
Firemen are still at the scene, and police say they're not treating the fire as suspicious.
It is most fitting that Christopher Beeching should perform his one-man tour de force, Champagne Charlie, in the New Tyne Theatre, exactly 100 years after the death of Champagne Charlie. You see, Champagne Charlie was the nickname given to George Leybourne. It was his most popular song, and George was born in Gateshead, just across the river, in 1842. And at the age of 19 in 1861, George had his first professional engagement in Bamburgh's Music Hall in Newcastle. And George, with his great act as a heavy swell, revolutionized the whole of music hall. Here's to George Leybourne, Champagne Charlie, and Christopher Beeching's wonderful portrayal.
We have many visitors these days from the world of show business, and recently Tommy Trinder came into the theatre and was absolutely fascinated by the acoustics, the sight lines, and the whole beauty of the auditorium.
You lucky people. No, really, that's a mistake. I'm the lucky one. You know, I'm playing at the moment at the Tyne Theatre in Newcastle. And I think I'm very lucky to be playing in a place like this because, you know, today, show business is a distressed industry, not from the point of view of the shows, but from the point of view of the theatres. They've been allowed to sort of become a bit derelict. They've got shabby. There's no money to do them up. And to come into a theatre like this is really like a tonic to me. First of all, this was obviously built as an opera house because they've got something that even Marconi didn't think of. We're living in the age of amplified sound. And today you walk into this theatre and it was the architect that was smart enough to amplify the sound. Something that I suppose 9 out of 10 people come to the theatre would not even notice. If you sit down in the stalls or in the circle and you look up at what we call above the proscenium arch, the stage technically is called the proscenium, and the arch that houses the stage is the proscenium arch. If you look above that, there's built into the theatre a bowl, a sort of a dish that reflects the sound out to the audience. Now, you can hear every word, every syllable, and it didn't take an electronic engineer to do that. It took an architect. I don't suppose there's an architect in the country today that could design a real theatre as this is. Now, not only is it architecturally beautifully built, it's in beautiful condition. It's now, the gold leaf is where the gold leaf should be. It's clean, it's bright. In fact, it's an ideal theatre. You know, there's something in going out for an evening. It's all right to sit at home and watch television, but this is commonplace. It's rather like nobody ever feels excited that they're going to the tap for a cup of water, a glass of water. But there is something about going out to a show. And when you can sit in comfortable surroundings, the eye line, this is another architectural development. You can see the show from any seat you're sitting in. You know, today, what have they done? They've either pulled them down, closed them, or turned them into bingo halls. You know, they play bingo everywhere. Where I live, there's a Catholic church hall. Every Wednesday morning they play bingo. The priest shouts the numbers, he shouts them in Latin, so as the Protestants can't win. But this is a real theatre, long way it reigned the way it is.
I do hope that you have enjoyed this visit behind the footlights of the new Tyne Theatre and Opera House.
The future of this unique theatre is certainly assured, a precious jewel in Newcastle's historical crown.
Goodbye to the new Tyne Theatre, and I leave my magic with you.